Joining us here in the Fox headquarters in New York, former New York Congressman and President of the Albanian American Civic League, Joseph Dioguardi, and with us in Washington, Lieutenant Colonel Bob McGinnis, Senior Director for Foreign Policy and National Security at the Family Research Council. Congressman Dioguardi, let me begin with you. We have another bombing of an empty building in the middle of the night. What good is this? We're going in and bombing empty buildings. That's not going to have any effect on Milosevic, is it?
I hope it's not being done on purpose, but we have to continue the bombing. And I have to trust our military that they know what they're doing. And I hope their hands are not being tied. I keep hearing these comparisons to LBJ in Vietnam, where he was trying to micromanage what buildings to bomb and whatnot. I hope this is not the truth.
Well, Colonel McGinnis, is this a way to fight a war?
No, it's not, Alan. In fact, I'm very concerned that we're escalating this with 24 Apaches and the LRS going in there, which essentially, as I'm concerned, that's ground forces. And we need to recognize, Alan, a couple of clear facts. During World War II, 22 German divisions plus 200,000 Croatians couldn't subdue the Serbs. And in fact, Tito, for 40 years, built a massive underground complex. That's where his army is today, with their tanks and their food, and they're ready for us with thousands of anti-tank mines with gas, sarin gas, which they've already tested. And so this is news you haven't heard about.
Why does it take us 3 weeks? First they said it would take 2 weeks to get the Apache helicopters. Now they're saying it's going to take 3 weeks. I don't understand why it takes so long to get what we need over there. Why is that?
Because the readiness is in the tubes. We don't have the people assigned where they're supposed to. The helicopters are going to have to pay parts from older helicopters to fix these, and then they deploy. Of course, the humanitarian support issue is also in the mix.
Why did we announce that we would not have a ground component? Why did we send any signals to Slobodan Milosevic?
Well, that raises a great question,
mistake.
Colonel McGinnis. That's the point. This was very poorly planned from the beginning. We announced that's going to be the case. 12 days to get the USS Roosevelt over there. We're running out of cruise missiles. Warnings by the Joint Chiefs that weren't heeded by this president that they shouldn't involve themselves only in an air campaign. 3 weeks we got to wait for the Apaches. What's going on here, Colonel? I'm not a military expert, but this sounds like one of the most ill-conceived military missions I've ever heard of.
Yeah, it's Nintendo war-making at the worst here in Washington. You only have 11 of the 15 aircraft carriers we need. We pulled our AE-6Bs out of Iraq, where we're actually bombing people every day, over to this operation. We pulled an aircraft carrier out of Asia, where Taiwan is
Let me ask
vulnerable.
you about this, though, Colonel, because as you rightly so point out, we had heard that the U.S. fighter jet patrols over Iraq was so critically important, and 2 weeks later, they're not so important because they're headed over to Kosovo. You pointed out that the Kitty Hawk was the only aircraft carrier station in northern Asia. It's now to the Persian Gulf to replace the Theodore Roosevelt. We're running out of the cruise missiles, so what do? We take the cruise missiles that have nuclear capability and we're going to dismantle that and turn them into conventional cruise missiles?
And Alan,
it's unbelievable.
And why don't we do something simple, as we did in the Bosnian War? Arm the Kosovo Liberation Army. We gave arms to the Croatians. Why wouldn't we do it to the Kosovo Liberation Army?
You want to send troops over there.
That'll come too.
We'll get into that in a little bit, and lots more to come tonight. What do you think? We always want to know. Call us 1-888-TEL-FOX. We'll be right back with more on today's bombing, and we'll have some information on the possible release of the POWs. Will they be home soon? All that coming up on Hannity and Colmes.
Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. I'm Sean Hannity. It's another busy night here at the Fox News Channel. Bombs continue to pound Belgrade and Kosovo on this day 15 of the NATO action. All right, I want to go to you, Colonel McGinnis. I want to ask you, the State Department has named 9 Yugoslavian commanders. They say they are gathering evidence against them for war crimes to bring against the International War Crime Tribunal. Slobodan Milosevic's name wasn't even on this, even though he's the guy responsible. Now, if these guys know this is going to be the end game for them, will that not encourage further atrocities?
Well, I don't know if it'll encourage further. I think, quite frankly, the commanders are watching what they're doing. I think the police, for the most part, are doing most of these terrible atrocities. Generally, the professional soldiers don't do that. But, Sean, it's important to understand here that we're being called by, and unfortunately this administration is pushing more so toward ground assault or ground troops. Most of the people that are going to end up on the ground will be American forces. The European militaries are radically downsized, and yet we only have 10 active active divisions, and they're scattered all over Kingdom Come.
Well,
we don't have the forces to do what we're about to
Colonel, you are with the Family Research Council, Colonel Bob McGinnis. You will also, as a part of a protest, be speaking in front of the White House tomorrow, and I'm sure you will be on Fox News tomorrow night. I want to go back to you, Congressman Dioguardi. I want to ask now, when we talk about Milosevic here in Yugoslavia, they closed the borders today. They started sending the refugees back, and this is all Milosevic is doing. And first of all, it seems that the NATO bombing is what we're hurting the very people we wanted to help, because there was a rise in an escalation by Milosevic as a result of the bombing. Did we cause all these problems?
We didn't cause these problems. They were happening for 10 years. The Albanians have been subject to brutal oppression. But going back to Milosevic, the real crime over here is that we still want to make a place at the table for Slobodan Milosevic. His name should be on that list.
I agree.
His name was put on that list by the U.S. House of Representatives last June and by the Senate. There's no question he's the one that's to blame.
Congressman, no doubt he's a thug, but keep in mind that we have a crisis over there. It's been a civil war. The Albanians' hands aren't completely clean, especially the Kele. I think
don't create parity. There's no parity.
The evidence is clear. They have conducted terrorist activities against the Serbs, but nobody's going to defend Milosevic.
You're probably getting that from the wire services from Belgrade. There's no proof of that. This is exactly what the Serbs are spreading around here.
New York Times, the Washington Post have published this over the last 2 decades. I have plenty of evidence, Congressman, and you do too.
There is no way to compare, even in the least, what's going on with the Serbs versus the Albanians.
You have to look at the broad sense of history here.
We glossed over before, and the fact is, as Sean started to point out, that the atrocities have gotten a lot worse since NATO went in. 360,000 refugees since the beginning of this conflict. And we've made things worse. They go to Macedonia, they're rejected, there's concern about imbalance of power in that area. We've caused this by what we've done. We haven't, and Milosevic has gotten what he wanted. He got the ethnic cleansing.
Did you forget we had Rambouillet, right? The 3 weeks Rambouillet was going on, do you remember what was happening? 40,000 troops were marching to Kosova. Tanks M84 with night vision. Did we cause that? It was happening while we were at the peace table, and they wouldn't agree to anything.
Colonel McGinnis, well, let's get the timeline straight here.
That was October.
Colonel McGinnis.
That was well before the bombing, Colonel.
Alan, we need to go back to what we were talking about 2 weeks ago. You know, we have come in the post-Cold War era into a very delicate situation where we have rogues like Milosevic that are really wagging this whole United States of America all over the globe.
And they shouldn't be doing that.
And they shouldn't be doing that.
And we shouldn't let them.
We need to revisit.
Holbrooke shouldn't be dignifying him. He shouldn't have put him at the table at Dayton as a partner in peace.
Dioguardi, you're going to get the last word tonight. Colonel McGinnis with the Family Research Council. We'll see you in front of the White House breaking news tomorrow, Colonel. Thank you for being on board. We have a lot more news to get to tonight, a breaking news night. Some of the refugees are missing. Where did they go? We'll talk to some people up close and personal to these unfolding events. Stay tuned to the Fox News Channel.